Hey guys, this is Hell Hades, and this is another Raid Shadow Legends video. So after the positive feedback from the second clan boss episode, which looked at attack down champions, I thought I'd follow it up with the next stage of my clan boss requirement, which is a really good poisoners. So if you haven't already seen my guide on how to beat the clan boss, you should watch that first, and it kind of gives you a good overview of the different types of debuffs and buffs you would want from a clan boss team to take it down much easier. And then these off-spin episodes are basically looking at each of those sections in a lot of detail, picking out the champions from all of the champion pool and trying to show people the best way to go. So before I get into that, I just want to give a quick shout out to a few people that come on as patrons of mine. It really helps me to get the resources to build this sort of content. A lot of it is quite resource heavy, so really appreciate it. So 4 people I'd like to shout out: Semjaza, Liquid Fiend, Eldorco, and Manny. Really appreciate the patronage, and also there's a few more which I'm just waiting for in-game names from. So yeah, as I say, really appreciate the support. So in terms of these episodes, there's a really great tool. I've shown it to you before, but it's something I use a lot. So there's a website called Ayumilove. Ayumilove is really good for trying to find out specific areas of the game and how to and what champions kind of help you in those areas. There's a load of stuff on this website, loads of tips for beginners, loads of ways in terms of how to progress in this game. But what I really like is this area down the right hand side where it tells you, but by different aura or buff or debuff, anyone in the game that's got that skill. So if I click debuff poison and then I look down, it basically tells me which champions have got the weak version of poison and then which champions have got the strong version of poison. So for building a guide like this, sometimes there's champions that I might not know that well. I'll just click into them and I'll make a judgment call as to whether I think it's a suitable skill to put into a guide like this. So an example of that, of somebody who didn't make the cut, would have been Perforator. His poison was, where is his poison? His poison's on his A1, but it was a 30% chance, buffed up to 50, and it only gives a poison debuff for 1 turn. The rest of his kit didn't seem that interesting, so I've decided to leave him off. The reason I've done that is because this is a big category and we're actually going to be spending quite a bit of time here anyway, and I didn't want to make it longer than it should be. So I've only really pulled out people that I think are worthy of a discussion. So let's get into this. I'm going to start with uncommon and rares. I'll group them together. There's actually only one uncommon in this list, but he's definitely worthy of a shout out because he massively kind of he just bats above his weight band really. So yeah, let's start with him. Well, actually, let me just start firstly tell you the way I have attributed points for the poisoners. So I basically looked at what is their base defense. Defense is a stat which allows you to keep somebody alive in clan boss, and for me it's probably one of the most important stats. So the lower the base defense, the harder it is to build their defense up through items, and therefore the harder it is to keep them alive. You cannot do damage when your poisoner is dead. So that's a really important stat to me. I've looked at what other utility can they bring to the table. I've done some maths around. If once we've done a full cycle of the clan boss's turns, so I'm taking that as the 2 AoEs and then the 1 stun. For me, that's a full rotation. How many chances did we have to land poison? What strength were they? And how long would they last for? And I've then looked at, if we had a counter attacker, what does that look like then? From that, I'm able to pull some numbers to give us a damage potential. So that's those 3 areas there. I've then looked at, if the champion is not booked, how would I rank them? How easy is it to book that champion up? This was feedback from the last video saying that actually that would be a nice thing to see. What would their rank be when they're booked? And then what level of clan boss do I think they've got potential to fight? And then that gives me my total score at the end here. Hope that all makes sense. So let's just get into it. So I'm going to pull out Outlaw Monk first. He has got low base defense, but he's actually got a nice skill in his A1 that gives him 25% chance to get an extra turn. So I gave him a point for that. His A2 is what actually lays the poisons, and it's a strong ability in terms of laying 2 large poisons. For an uncommon, that is a really, really great skill. Anyone who's kind of beginner level, moving into kind of mid-tier, could look at this guy. He's really easy to book, and he actually does a decent amount of damage. Um, because his poison is not on his A1, a counter attacker doesn't actually help him in terms of outputting more damage. But he's got a decent damage potential for an uncommon, so definitely someone that's worth investing in if you're quite new to the game. I actually got a friend who is in the Channel 9 clan group, Andicus, who has used Outlaw Monk right through to Nightmare level and is still doing very good damage on Nightmare. So, don't sleep on this guy if you're new to the game. He's really good. So obviously, being an uncommon, he's incredibly easy to book. You can just buy him in the market. You can just pick him up quite easily. He's very cheap to book. You don't need to use actual books for him. Once he's booked up, I've ranked him up as a B, and I think realistically Brutal is about his cap, although I've seen him in Nightmare. Brutal is really his cap, so he gets a 12. Blood Painter, I'm not going to spend much time on this guy because he's pretty poor. I just thought I'd put him in because he seemed like he had an A1 poison. Felt like he might be relevant when I was looking through, but actually his potential is very, very weak. I would say if this is your best option, then probably go with something else. Not this guy poisoning would not give you a lot of damage. He's got a nice base defense, which helps him. He can turn me to fill the rest of your team, which is nice, and he can increase attack of your team, which is nice. His actual poison potential though is very low. It only lands for one turn, and it's a low percentage chance to hit. Rank unbooked, I've put him as a D, and then a D booked as well. I just don't think he's got much that he can do for you. I wouldn't take him any further than normal. So overall 7 points. Kale is definitely somebody that you want to invest time in if you're quite early game or mid game. He's definitely the best starter champion because of this utility that he brings to clan boss. So he's got a very good base defense. 914 is very good for a poisoner. It doesn't really bring any other utility with him, but this is nice already. His poison cycle gives him a decent damage potential. All of his poisons are the large. Well, what I've done here, if anyone's kind of saying, well, hold on a minute, his A1 is a 2.5% poison. I've worked these numbers back and halved the multiplier for the amount of 2.5s that be in here, so that it all goes into the same 5% multiplier. So my maths are right. I just have done some moving around of numbers there. It gives us a damage potential of 32. He does benefit from having a counter-attack champion because he'll continue to lay those A1s. So some nice synergy there for a team. So I put him unbooked as a B, booked as an A. The main reason being is you actually gain a bit of benefit from cooldown when you book up and debuff chance. So definitely worth booking this guy up. Quite easy to book being a rare, especially if you're kind of mid game. And this guy will take you right through to Nightmare and do good damage for you on Nightmare. You do need to take advantage of this decent level of defense. So don't be putting him in attack chests, attack gloves, attack boots. If you're only using for clan boss, you want to put him in defense gloves and defense chest, and then he will last a time and he'll do the damage for you. I've given him 17 points. Kyria I threw in there just because I thought she might have some interesting utility. I didn't realise she was a poisoner actually at first. Got an okay base defense. She's got this nice ability which is that kind of team attack, brings two of your team in to do some damage. So what that means is actually she will kick in a bit more damage than a standard poisons, especially if she's paired with another poisoner on an A1. She actually wouldn't be bad paired with someone like an outlaw monk. Or maybe more like a KO actually, or a couple of the epics we'll get into soon. So her poisons basically throughout a full rotation will get you on average one stack of poison, and that poison lasts for 2 turns. So her damage potential is quite low at 10. So I've ranked her as a D and then a C if you get her booked up. And I think she could probably take you to hard, so I've given her 8 points. So let's get into the epics. This is where we start to get into some of the juicy stuff. I have used most of these epics at some point. This was actually quite interesting for me because I tried to rank them and score them completely, basically as if I'd never used them, to try and be as kind of honest as possible. And what was interesting for me, the one that stood out for me was Marksman. I really don't like Marksman. I think he's not a very good clan boss champion, but yet he was scoring not very different to people like Juliana and AFR on my ranking system, so that was quite interesting. Anyway, AFR, I just kind of call out some of the big bits. You can read the stuff that I've got here. He's got an ability to steal a buff, which is good. His defense is not bad. He lands his poison once booked up. It's on a free turn cooldown, and it lands for 3 turns. So actually pretty good. 4 lots of 5% poison is strong. Gives him a good damage potential. He's one of the highest damage potentials for this epic class, and he's quite easy to book in that you don't need that many books on him to really hit his potential. I put him in as a B. Once he's booked, I think he goes up to an A, and he's definitely capable of doing Nightmare Clan Boss. So he's got an 18 score. Juliana's got a similar kit, got a better defense. She's got a HP burn that she brings with her as well, which gives you a bit more damage. Her poison is not as effective though as AFR, so you kind of trade off an HP burn for a worse poison ability. But once you add those two together, the poison and the HP burn, actually a damage potential is very similar. Neither of them, yeah, AFR doesn't benefit from having a counter attacker in terms of his poison and damage, whereas Juliana does get a bit of benefit. That's because she actually gains some turn meter gain, which enables her to place a poison more regularly. That's where that multiplier is coming from. Reasonable to book, but I don't think she really benefits from being booked. She doesn't get a better cooldown. She doesn't get a better percentage chance to place. So actually, I would say you don't necessarily need to book Juliana to kind of get a damage potential. She can do Nightmare, 17 points. I think she's kind of middle of the road. Yaga is the freebie that you get, so I thought I'd throw him in. You get him for, I think, 60 days playing. He's got a very good base defense for an epic, one of the better ones. Doesn't bring any other utility, so everything he does is around poison. And his damage potential is 33, so it's actually not bad. It's kind of middle of the road. If he's not booked, he's pretty poor though. You do need to book him up to get his percentage chance to land higher, and he needs a lot of books. So I've kind of put him as C's for both of those. Once he is booked, actually he's not bad, and he could do Nightmare Clan Boss, but he needs to be booked up to be able to do that. He's got 13 points. Let's move on to Marksman. So Marksman, as I say, it kind of shocked me really with some of these scores. He does bring a turn meter boost. He's not too bad for base defense. I guess the main thing which I don't like about him is his poison only lasts 1 turn. That's definitely his weakness. But even with that, he still brings a reasonable damage potential. So yeah, I mean, I would not really advise making him because I've seen him in action, but the numbers here are saying that he's probably quite middle of the road. So if you got him and you don't have something better, then this guy might be worth just pulling out and trying. But he's got a similar damage potential to Kale. So if you already got Kale running, I wouldn't make this guy. He's quite easy to book because he doesn't necessarily need a lot of books to gain any advantage from his skills. But I probably wouldn't see him going further than brutal with what I've seen in the actual game. So 15 points. Colt Brawler. This is a beast of a character. If you've got him, he's the highest damage potential champion for clan boss for poisoners in the game. That's because of his 2 abilities. But he's got pretty poor base defense. He does have the ability to self heal and take an extra turn within his own kit. He's got 2 different poison potentials, and they both are able to go off on the same turn, which is how he gets such a high damage potential. And he actually benefits really well from a counter attacker. He basically goes in and nigh on doubles his damage, or gains about another 80% of his damage once he's got a counter attacker. So 100 damage potential is huge. It's easily the highest in this category. He doesn't even need books to achieve that either. The books do help him in terms of gets a bit of cooldown reduction, but he gets a bit of chance to land his A1, but it's not essential on him. And he doesn't need a lot of books to make that happen. So I've stored him quite well there. Once he is booked, I'd say he's S tier. The thing that lets him down is his defense. He does die reasonably quickly in Clan Boss. Certainly when you get to something like Ultra Nightmare, this defense doesn't really stack it. But he scores really highly overall. He's one of the highest damage dealers in the game for Clan Boss if you gear him properly. And Steelskull actually comes in the same sort of points and can deal with the same sort of Clan Boss. He's just a completely different sort of champion. So he's got much higher base defense. He can put defense up for the team. He's got an AoE heal. He's got a single target heal. He brings a lot more utility. His poison potential is still strong. It's definitely somebody that you need to book to get the potential out of. So he's got potential damage around 52 multiplier. Unbooked, I've said he's a B. His chance to hit his A1 poison is low when it's unbooked. But booked up, I've said he gets to an SS because he's got this utility as well as then a strong poison. He's not the easiest to book. He takes a few books. But yeah, as I say, Ultra Nightmare. These two are definitely people that you do not want to sit on. They are great clan boss champions. So let's get into the legendaries, and you might be surprised actually that some of the damage potential is not even as high as those epics. But let's go through him. So Bad L, I've put him in. He's got an amazing base defense, highest base defense out of all of the poisoner teams, and that means that you can keep him alive for a long time in clan boss. He's also got an increased damage passive. He's got a heal on his A1 which goes off every time he hits, and he's got a heal over time well for the whole team. So he's actually primarily a healer that does poison. Therefore, his potential damage is actually quite low. But he would have to be part of a team of 2 poisoners. He couldn't do it by himself. So but he's got consistency. He does land his poisons. He's got 2 5% poisons. They last for 2 turns, and you don't get the benefit of more poison with a counter attacker. So that's why his damage potential doesn't kind of spike. You do need to kind of book him up really to get the reduced cooldowns on this poison ability. So he's obviously being a legendary, he's not that easy to book, but he doesn't take anywhere near as many books as a lot of the legendaries. So I've put him in as a B. Definitely Ultra Nightmare. Comes in at 26 points for me as a poisoner, not as a champion, as a poisoner. Dracomorph, again, has got a very good base defense, second highest for any poisoners that I found. He's got really great utility as well. So 2 of the key things you need for clan boss: decrease defense and weaken. He has got 4 lots of 5% poison, which lasts for 3 turns. It's huge. It's really, really strong. These two together, Bad L and Draco, would be amazing, by the way. It doesn't benefit though from having a counter attacker, so you don't get any more poison, but good damage potential, one of the top 5. So unbooked, I've said he's an A. You can still use him really effectively. Booked, he goes up to SS. Quite hard to book. He takes a lot of books for a legendary. But yeah, definitely capable of Ultra Nightmare. 32 points. He comes in, what, 2nd place on points. Then we've got Nethril. So Nethril is one of the highest damage potential, if not over time, he might even be the highest damage potential champion in the game. So I've got him in as a 75 damage versus 100 from a Cult Brawler, but his defense is that much higher that he will outlast a Cult Brawler by a long way if you gear him properly, which means that although his damage potential is lower, over the time of a whole clan boss fight, he probably would do more damage. Hope that makes sense. Doesn't bring any other utility with him for clan boss. The rest of his kit is good utility, but it doesn't work in clan boss. But he's got good opportunity to land a lot of poisons. So he's got an A1 that just constantly lands poison and lands it well, and those poisons tick for 2 turns. So if you then have a counter attacker in the mix, he's got the opportunity to do a lot of poisons through one full rotation. 7.5 on average, based on his percentage to land his hits, if he's got a counter attacker. So that's huge. That's a huge. That will keep this guy can keep the clan boss pops up on poisons by himself. So unbooked, I've got him as an S. It's a B to booked. He doesn't take a huge amount of books. You just basically need to land books on his A1. So once he's booked up, definitely an SS class. Ultra Nightmare, 28 points. The reason why his points are lower than his kind of damage potential is mainly because he's got no other utility that's going to help us. I've got Tomb Lord in there, so Tomb Lord's got a very good base defense as well. Brings decreased defense and decreased attack, so he's pretty good. His actual poison ability though is quite weak. 4 lots of poison, which is nice, the stronger version, but only lasts for 1 turn. So his damage potential is low because actually this has got a reasonable cooldown. So unbooked, I'd say he's a C. Doesn't really bring enough. The cooldown's too long when he's unbooked. But booked up, he gets a bit stronger, but I still wouldn't rate him ahead as a poisoner. I wouldn't rate him ahead of, even like a few of the guys from this previous screen here. I'd still rate Juliana, AFR, Cult Brawler, everybody ahead of him. as a poisoner. He can hack it though in Nightmare because he's got the better base defense, so he still comes in at 18 points. Last two then, so we've got Venus. Venus is pretty nutty. She's quite insane in terms of her kit. 980 base defense is strong. I mean, she just brings so much here. She's got decreased defense and weaken, the two strongest versions. She's got an HP burn as well. She's void, so she's got no clan boss that she's weak against. So she gets 7 points in other utility, which is massive. She's then got a poison on her A1, which again means that she scales damage really well. She'll on average get 3 off in a full rotation generally, and if she's with a counter attacker, that goes up to 5. So she's pretty close to being able to keep maximum damage up on the clan boss by herself. 65 damage potential is really high. S tier unbooked, SS booked. Easter book is an A. She doesn't actually need a lot of books to get a damage potential. She doesn't need books for the poisons to land, for example. Ultra Nightmare, 34 points, highest point scorer in my tally in my list. And then lastly, then we got Zavia, very low base defense. It's definitely a weakness. She's not, because of that, she doesn't last long enough in clan boss. She doesn't bring any other utility for clan boss, but a poison is on her A1, so her damage potential is decent. It does scale well with a counter attacker as well, but for me, she's better as a dungeon poisoner than she is as a clan boss poisoner. So she's S tier unbooked, S tier booked. She doesn't need books to make her poisons land better, or she doesn't gain any cooldown reductions on her poisoning. So she doesn't really need books at all to be a clan boss champion for you. Definitely an Ultra Nightmare capability, but one of the weaker legendaries, I'd say, in clan boss as your poisoner. So then I'm just going to go on to the tier list, and this is, I think, always quite an interesting thing to see. So obviously you do have a couple of the legendaries as the top end. Venus and Draco score the best out of my tier list. You then follow though by 2 epics, so Steelskull and Occult Brawler coming next, with Nethril, Bad and Zavia following those. But I just think it's quite nice to see that there's not a huge amount of difference here in the sort of mid tier. You have a sort of standout top tier of poisoners. You then have this kind of mid tier, and then you have a couple which I just probably wouldn't bother with. But it's quite nice to see that, you know, Outlaw Monk is not out of his depth really in this kind of, you know, bottom end of the mid tier. And then you've got the names that probably you've heard of, like Juliana, AFR, Kale, which can definitely hold their own in this mid tier. So I think it's quite interesting to kind of see it like this. And what I wanted to do as well is just throw this one in for this video, because it depends really what you want your poisoner to do. If you are just looking for somebody that is going to kick out the most damage over a clan boss fight, and you don't need the extra utility, so if you do not need Venus's utility with a decreased defense, weakened because you've got other champions that are doing it, then actually she's not the champion that you want to use if you've got Nethril as well. Chances are you probably, I mean, you'd be lucky to have all of these champions, but and if you can keep Occult Brawler alive, then he can do all of the poison work that you need. You don't need a second poisoner with him. So I would say if you can actually manage to keep him alive, he's your best damage potential poisoner. He's just quite hard to do because his defense is low. But this is just a kind of different view of, you know, where does the damage come from? And you'll see here, Outlaw Monk actually will out damage in the right team setup someone like Bad Alcazar or Tomb Lord, but he just doesn't bring the other utility that they bring. You know, Kale sits quite nicely up there as a rare that can kind of stand up damage against a lot of the sort of mid-tier epics, and definitely will out damage some of the legendaries in the right setup. So yeah, I think that was just quite interesting to see. So I hope that's been useful. I've been Hell Hades. You know, please like and subscribe to the channel. Let me know some feedback on this video. Did it kind of hit the mark for you, or is there some stuff that I missed that you'd like to have seen? And catch you all soon.